In a world where uniforms grant unchecked authority, one officer's act of cruelty didn't just harm a child, it exposed the deeper machinery of racism itself. When a black teen's prosthetic leg was ripped away during a routine stop, it wasn't just a moment of brutality, it was a mirror held up to the face of systemic racism, racial bias, and the prejudice embedded in every level of law enforcement. What that officer didn't know: her father wasn't just any man. He was power, quiet, and black, and ready to confront the entire system. This is not just a story about a bad cop. It's about racial injustice written into policy. Discrimination wrapped in discipline. Workplace racism hidden behind polished badges and biased evaluations. It's about how professional environments, even those sworn to protect, often mirror the same toxic power dynamics that target minorities and silence dissent. But what happens when transformative justice walks in wearing the same uniform and decides to turn the system inside out? What happens when leadership doesn't excuse abuse, it ends it? Keep watching, because this story peels back every layer, from public disgrace to private cover-up, from HR stonewalling to the final reckoning, and dares to ask, in a world built on unequal rules, can there ever be true equality? If you've ever experienced selective enforcement, been silenced in a corporate accountability meeting, or felt the sting of being seen as a threat in your own skin, this story is for you. This story is about more than revenge, it's about reckoning. Watch to the end, and then ask yourself, what would justice look like where you work? The sirens had already faded when the officer stepped out of his patrol car and adjusted his belt like he was ready for a war no one else could see. Tiana stood on the curb with a bag of Sour Patch Kids in one hand and a Gatorade in the other, trying not to look nervous. Her prosthetic leg made a soft click when she shifted her weight, the bright pink plastic catching the afternoon sun. "Hey," Officer Mallory's voice cut through the air like a snapped branch. "What's that in your hand?" Tiana blinked. "It's my drink." He didn't slow down. "You pay for that?" "Yes, sir." "You got a receipt?" She looked around. The clerk inside had waved her off with a nod. He knew her, but she didn't have the paper. She hadn't thought she'd need to prove anything for a $2 Gatorade and candy. I didn't take one." Mallory's jaw tightened. "So you're telling me you walked out of a store with merchandise and no proof of purchase?" "I didn't steal," she said, her voice small but firm. He stepped closer. Too close. "Let me see your bag." "I don't have a bag." His eyes moved to her legs. "Then what's that?" She glanced down. "That's my leg." His silence stretched, unreadable behind his mirrored shades. Then he stepped even closer. "You got smart answers, huh?" "I'm just telling the truth." "Turn around." "What?" "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "I didn't do anything." "Now." She flinched. Her hand instinctively dropped the candy, and it hit the ground with a soft thud. The officer moved faster than she expected, grabbing her arm and pulling it behind her back. The Gatorade spilled sideways, fizzing on the concrete. Tiana's breath caught in her throat. "You're hurting me." "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." Her left foot buckled, and she tried to shift weight to the prosthetic, but it didn't hold. She dropped to one knee. Mallory didn't stop. He reached down and yanked at the leg, not to help, but to inspect. "What is this even made of? Doesn't look secure." "Please," her voice cracked. Mallory's grip moved to the release latch. Tiana gasped and reached down to cover it. "No, that's part of me." "It's not real," he said cold, "and it could be used to hide something." Then he pulled. The release popped with a mechanical click, and the leg slid free. She collapsed onto the pavement with a sharp cry, her right pant leg now crumpled and hollow. The prosthetic hit the ground with a clatter, a sound that cracked something invisible in the air. The group of teens outside the store froze. A man across the street turned slowly. Someone whispered, "What the hell?" Mallory stood over her, holding the leg by its thigh joint. Should have complied. Tiana didn't cry. She just reached forward, one elbow down for balance, dragging her body an inch at a time toward her leg. You reach for that again, Mallory barked, and I'll have to escalate. I'm not a threat, she said, her voice trembling but steady. I'm just not whole without it. That was when the phones came out. 2 blocks away, in a quiet office with tall windows and a view of the city skyline, Marcus Brooks felt his phone vibrate 3 times. He ignored the first 2. He always did during meetings. The third buzz meant family. He glanced down and saw the message. You need to see this. It's Tiana. He tapped the video open. The first frame was shaky, tilted, catching Mallory mid-action, holding her leg like a piece of confiscated property. Marcus didn't move, didn't speak. He watched the entire 37-second clip in silence. Then he stood. His chair rolled back, and the room quieted. Marcus? A colleague asked. He buttoned his jacket. Postpone the afternoon session. Is something wrong? Yes, he said, already walking, but not for long. The desk sergeant at the 7th precinct was mid-conversation when the doors opened. Marcus stepped in. He wore a dark navy suit with no tie, shirt collar crisp, face unreadable. His presence didn't just command the room, it shifted it. Conversations stalled, chairs creaked. One officer stood, then sat again. I'm here to speak with Officer Kurt Mallory, Marcus said. The sergeant's brows pinched. I'm sorry, sir. Do you have an appointment? Marcus raised one eyebrow. No. Then I'm afraid. Do you know who I am? The sergeant paused. I'm Marcus Brooks, civilian commissioner for the oversight committee assigned to this precinct. I report directly to city council and the state attorney's office. A breath caught in someone's throat. I'm also the father of the 12-year-old girl your officer brutalized today. The sergeant looked toward the hallway. Mallory's just finishing a statement. Perfect. Mallory appeared, still half smirking, his hands loose at his sides like he'd just won something petty. You the parent? He asked. Marcus turned slowly. You the man who took a child's leg while she begged you not to? She resisted. She was disabled. She was non-compliant. Marcus took a slow step forward. Did you hear her when she told you it was part of her? Did you see her face when you pulled it off like a boot? Mallory's smirk faded slightly. Policy allows. Policy protects, Marcus snapped, until it doesn't. Mallory opened his mouth, but Marcus held up a phone. Your body cam's mysteriously offline. But hers? Hers is on every platform now. Yours ends here. I want my union rep. You'll need a lawyer more. He turned to the sergeant. Effective immediately, as acting authority granted by Section 3.2 of the City's Civilian Review Charter, he is suspended pending investigation. You can't. Yes, Marcus interrupted, I can, and I just did. The room went dead silent. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. From the hallway, a lieutenant stepped forward, someone older, someone who'd once served beside Marcus during a community reform session years ago. They locked eyes. No salute this time, just slow recognition. You're really pulling the pin, the lieutenant said quietly. I told you I would, Marcus said, if I ever had to. The lieutenant nodded once. Then it's done. Mallory looked around like the floor had moved beneath him. You're all really letting this happen? Marcus leaned in, voice low. You didn't just take her leg. You tried to take her dignity. That makes this personal and permanent. He turned and walked out. Not another word. That night, Tiana sat on the porch, a blanket draped over her lap, her temporary crutches resting against the rail. She stared at the stars, or tried to. Marcus brought out a mug of tea and sat beside her. Did I do something wrong? She asked. No, he said softly. Then why did it feel like I did? He didn't answer right away. He looked at her, the way her shoulders curled inward, the way her hands stayed still in her lap, guarding something inside. There are people, he said finally, who only understand power. You scared him. I didn't do anything. You stood your ground. You told the truth. That's enough. She looked away, blinking hard. I wanted to scream, but I didn't want to make it worse. You didn't need to scream, he said. You had me. And in the morning, the city knew her name. The first article dropped at 6:42 a.m. A grainy screenshot of Tiana on the sidewalk, her face half turned, lips parted in shock, the hollow of her pant leg folded beneath her like a question mark. The headline didn't use her name yet, just disabled black girl has prosthetic leg removed by officer during routine stop, but it didn't have to. By 8:03, her name was trending. By 9 o'clock, Marcus's inbox had 74 meeting requests, and the mayor's office had called twice. Tiana stayed home. She didn't ask to. She just didn't move when the bus pulled up and Marcus didn't force her. He sat across from her at the table, watching her stir cereal she didn't eat. She traced circles in the milk with her spoon, her eyes far off. They keep saying incident, she murmured. Marcus leaned in. What do you want them to say? Truth, she said. He didn't incident me. He humiliated me. Across the city, Officer Mallory sat alone in his apartment. His badge rested on the table like a loose tooth. The walls were bare. The TV was muted. His phone lit up every few seconds. Messages, missed calls, news alerts. He didn't answer any of them. At the 7th precinct, no one said his name aloud. Not even the ones who agreed with him behind closed doors. A few officers who'd once joked with him now turned the other way when he passed. One man, a rookie named Torres, who'd only been there a month, nodded at him in the hallway, just once, and got reassigned that same afternoon. The silence wasn't loyalty. It was survival. At school, Tiana's absence hit like a cold wind. Her best friend Layla tried to explain what happened, but most of the kids had already seen the video. Some had watched it 5 times. They did that to her? One boy whispered. But she's so quiet. The vice principal emailed home to check in. The words were polite but shallow. Marcus didn't answer. By noon, the footage was shown on daytime television. A host tilted her head solemnly and said, "It's hard to imagine what kind of mindset could justify such an act." Another guest, a civil rights attorney, said flatly, "It's not imagination. It's policy mixed with unchecked power. This isn't an accident, it's design." Marcus sat in the city oversight building, scrolling through clips, lips pressed into a thin line. Then someone knocked. It was Alyssa Groves, Deputy Director of Internal Affairs. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark suit, hair pulled into a tight bun that matched the tension in her jaw. She moved like she didn't have time to waste. "I read your suspension memo," she said. "Good," Marcus replied. "I also saw the footage." He looked up. "Do you have any doubt about what you saw?" she asked. "No," he said. "Do you?" She shook her head. "What I have is a problem. Mallory's union is already gearing up. They're claiming excessive oversight, political pressure, overreach. Let them." "You sure this is the Hill?" He nodded. "It's not a hill. It's my daughter." She paused. "Then Saturday, then you'll need to decide how far you're willing to go. Because this isn't going away. And neither are they." Back at home, Tiana finally asked the question she'd been holding since morning. "Do they know about my leg? I mean, before?" "You mean the police?" Marcus asked. She nodded. "I don't think they care," he said. "But they will." He opened his laptop and pulled up a folder. Old photos. The kind you don't post online. Tiana in her hospital bed at 6. Her face was rounder then, her eyes bigger, a little soldier who never asked why, just fought her way through it. The infection had come fast, the amputation faster, but she never let it stop her. He selected 3 photos. Her walking for the first time, her balancing on her prosthetic at a school recital, her hugging the technician who'd built it. "May I?" he asked. She looked at the screen, then nodded once. The post went up at 2:14 p.m. No hashtags, no outrage. Just 3 photos and Marcus's caption. "This is my daughter. The leg you ripped off? She earned it inch by inch. She is more whole than you will ever be." It had 30,000 shares in under an hour. That night, the first knock came just before dinner. A man in a brown jacket stood on the porch holding a bouquet of white lilies. "I don't mean to intrude," he said when Marcus opened the door, "but I saw what happened. My niece, she's got one leg too. I just wanted to say thank you for standing up." Marcus took the flowers silently, then nodded. The next morning, Tiana walked out to find 6 more bouquets on the porch. One had no card. One had a folded letter with 5 words, "You are more than enough." The tide had turned. But the system hadn't. Inside precinct headquarters, a memo began to circulate. Unofficial, no letterhead. But the message was clear: be careful what you say. They're watching. Some officers whispered about another witch hunt. Others started checking their own complaint files. A few, including one sergeant who'd backed Mallory in the past, quietly requested leave. Mallory called his rep. "They're going to make me the scapegoat." "You are the scapegoat," the rep said flatly, "and you gave them the hammer." He slammed the phone down. For the first time in 2 days, he felt something other than anger. It was a flicker of fear. At home, Tiana stood in front of the mirror. Her new sleeve fitted tighter, cleaner. Her balance was better now, not because of the leg, but because of what she carried. "You okay?" Marcus asked from the doorway. She nodded. "Are you scared?" "No," she said. "I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To be seen." And outside, the world was starting to look. The hearing was scheduled for Monday. Internal affairs. Closed session. No cameras. Just questions, testimonies, and the creeping weight of exposure. Tiana wasn't allowed in the building, but she waited outside, leg braced, chin high, in a simple navy dress with a single silver pin on her chest. A small flame. A badge from a summer camp for kids with amputations. She wore it without explanation. Inside, Marcus sat alone at the long table. A panel of 3 faced him. "We're here to review your recommendation of Officer Mallory's termination," one of them began. He didn't flinch. "I stand by it." "You understand the political implications?" "I understand the moral ones." A beat. "You're aware there is body cam footage?" He nodded. "I've seen it." "Would you care to comment on what we see around the 3:43 mark when Mallory reaches toward your daughter?" "I would." "Go ahead." Marcus took a breath. He didn't just remove her leg. He weaponized her difference. He made her pain into performance. He knew there was no threat. He wanted her humiliated. The room fell quiet. One panelist, a younger black woman with tight braids and a steady voice, leaned in. "Do you believe your daughter was targeted because she was black?" "I don't have to believe it," Marcus said. "I've lived it." Outside, the air was still. A few reporters waited at the corner. A student activist held up a sign: "One leg, 2 systems." Tiana sat quietly. Every few minutes, someone approached her, some with questions, others with apologies. She said little. She didn't need to. At the precinct, Mallory was called in. His uniform was sharp, badge still clipped, jaw locked, but his hands trembled. "You're not being fired yet," the union rep whispered. "They're baiting you. Just stick to protocol." He nodded once. But protocol didn't save him from the first question. "Why did you remove her prosthetic leg?" He shifted in his seat. "It was a safety concern. I couldn't verify what might have been hidden inside." "Had she given you any indication of threat?" No, he admitted. Did you know she was a minor? I didn't ask. Did you know she was black? His eyes flashed, but he didn't answer. Silence hung heavy. A panelist finally leaned back. Thank you, Officer Mallory. That will be all. Outside the building, a line had formed. Veterans, teachers, nurses, people from the city who had never met Tiana but felt like they knew her now. They didn't chant. They didn't yell. They simply stood, quiet, deliberate, holding signs with 3 words. Let her stand. At home that evening, Tiana held a mug of hot cocoa, her leg propped on a stool. Marcus sat across from her, scrolling through coverage of the hearing. You know what scares them the most? He said. What? That you didn't scream. She looked at him. They expected a scene, he said. Tears, rage, something loud. But you didn't give them that. You gave them dignity. They don't know how to fight that. She sipped the cocoa, then said quietly, I wanted to scream. I know. But I didn't want him to win. He reached across the table and touched her hand. You didn't just survive, Tiana, he said. You rewrote the room. That night, Marcus received a call from the governor's office. They wanted to monitor the situation. They wanted to ensure fairness. But what they really wanted was distance. Marcus told them, You're already late. At the precinct, another shift was beginning. One officer, Johnson, walked into the locker room to find a prosthetic leg sticker slapped onto his locker door. It wasn't a joke. It was a warning. We're not covering for him, someone muttered nearby. I didn't ask you to, Johnson said. Good. That weekend, Tiana agreed to meet with a reporter. They met at a public park, cameras off, not an interview, just a walk. Tiana wore sneakers with mismatched laces. The journalist, a woman in her 40s, kept pace beside her. What do you want people to know? She asked. Tiana paused. That it wasn't about my leg. What was it about? She turned her head. Control. The woman stopped writing. I've been black and disabled since I was 6, Tiana continued. I know how people look at me. Like I'm small. Like I need permission to be here. That officer didn't take my leg. He tried to take my space. The reporter blinked hard. Later that night, the quote would appear, centered, bold, across news outlets. He didn't take my leg. He tried to take my space. And across a city that was used to forgetting, something was finally being remembered. Tiana didn't return to school right away. The district had offered a quiet re-entry, private shuttle, a staff escort, even a sit-down with the principal. But Marcus knew it wasn't about safety. It was about optics. He looked across the table at his daughter, still eating toast in silence. You ready? He asked. She didn't answer at first. Then finally, I don't want to walk in like a symbol. You won't, he said. You'll walk in like yourself. So on Monday morning, she returned. No cameras, no escorts. Just her, a black hoodie zipped halfway, jeans folded over the edge of her prosthetic, and a bag slung across one shoulder. She walked into the front office on her own. The receptionist stood quickly. Oh, Tiana, welcome back. We have a room set aside for you just in case. I'm going to class, she said. The woman blinked. Okay, sure. Of course. Just let us know if you need anything. Tiana turned without answering. In the hallway, conversations halted as she passed. Some students lowered their eyes. Others stared. One girl, white, blonde, always loud in class, raised a hand halfway in greeting, then pulled it back. Tiana kept walking. Mr. Rubin, her literature teacher, saw her at the door and opened it wider. Good to have you back, he said softly. She nodded. She took her seat in the second row, same desk, same view of the board. But the room felt different now. as if the very air had shifted. 2 seats down, someone whispered, "That's her." Mr. Rubin shot a look, and the whisper died. By lunchtime, her return was trending. Not because she said anything. She hadn't posted, hadn't spoken to reporters. But someone snapped a photo of her walking down the hallway, tall, back straight, chin up, and captioned it. She came back stronger. Marcus sat at his desk, reviewing body cam transcripts. He didn't flinch when he saw Mallory's words printed out in black and white. "Stand up," the officer had said. And when she couldn't, "What's wrong with her?" Marcus circled that line with a red pen. 2 hours later, he received an alert from the Department of Justice. An external inquiry had been opened. Civil rights violations, excessive force, misuse of authority. It wasn't justice yet, but it was movement. At the precinct, Mallory was beginning to unravel. He'd been placed on paid leave, but the calls were coming faster now. Reporters, old classmates, even a cousin from Louisiana who hadn't called in years. He stepped out of his apartment building and someone threw a prosthetic leg keychain at his feet. "You take hers, we take yours," someone yelled from a car. He didn't respond. He just walked faster. By evening, his lawyer had called Marcus's office twice. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he sat with Tiana on the couch, watching a documentary about a violinist with one arm. "I think I want to start swimming again," she said suddenly. Marcus turned to her. "Really?" She nodded. "Not for them. For me." He didn't say anything, just reached out and squeezed her hand. At school, something else had shifted. A black student named Elijah, usually quiet, always near the back, raised his hand in history class to ask a question about civil protest. The teacher looked confused. "That's not today's topic." "It should be," Elijah said. Later that afternoon, flyers appeared in the hallways. "Silence is a choice. Wednesday, SITIN." No one claimed responsibility, but everyone knew where it started. Back at the precinct, a junior officer named Farley walked into the locker room and found the word "traitor" scratched into his locker. He'd testified truthfully during the inquiry. He'd said Mallory used language that didn't sound procedural, that it sounded personal. Farley didn't say a word. He pulled out a sticker from his pocket, a small image of Tiana's prosthetic with wildflowers drawn around it, and stuck it right over the scratch. No one said anything. But 2 lockers down, another sticker appeared by morning. Tiana didn't return to school right away. The district had offered a quiet re-entry, private shuttle, a staff escort, even a sit-down with the principal. But Marcus knew it wasn't about safety. It was about optics. He looked across the table at his daughter, still eating toast in silence. "You ready?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. Then finally, "I don't want to walk in like a symbol." "You won't," he said. "You'll walk in like yourself." So on Monday morning, she returned. No cameras, no escorts. Just her, a black hoodie zipped halfway, jeans folded over the edge of her prosthetic, and a bag slung across one shoulder. She walked into the front office on her own. The receptionist stood quickly. "Oh, Tiana, welcome back. We have a room set aside for you just in case." "I'm going to class," she said. The woman blinked. "Okay, sure, of course. Just let us know if you need anything." Tiana turned without answering. In the hallway, conversations halted as she passed. Some students lowered their eyes. Others stared. One girl, white, blonde, always loud in class, raised a hand halfway in greeting, then pulled it back. Tiana kept walking. Mr. Rubin, her literature teacher, saw her at the door and opened it wider. "Good to have you back," he said softly. She nodded. She took her seat in the second row, same desk, same view of the board, but the room felt different now, as if the very air had shifted. 2 seats down, someone whispered, "That's her." Mr. Rubin shot a look and the whisper died. By lunchtime, her return was trending. Not because she said anything. She hadn't posted, hadn't spoken to reporters. But someone snapped a photo of her walking down the hallway, tall, back straight, chin up, and captioned it. She came back stronger. Marcus sat at his desk reviewing body cam transcripts. He didn't flinch when he saw Mallory's words printed out in black and white. "Stand up," the officer had said. And when she couldn't, "What's wrong with her?" Marcus circled that line with a red pen. 2 hours later, he received an alert from the Department of Justice. An external inquiry had been opened. Civil rights violations, excessive force, misuse of authority. It wasn't justice yet, but it was movement. At the precinct, Mallory was beginning to unravel. He'd been placed on paid leave, but the calls were coming faster now. Reporters, old classmates, even a cousin from Louisiana who hadn't called in years. He stepped out of his apartment building, and someone threw a prosthetic leg keychain at his feet. "You take hers, we take yours," someone yelled from a car. He didn't respond. He just walked faster. By evening, his lawyer had called Marcus's office twice. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he sat with Tiana on the couch, watching a documentary about a violinist with one arm. "I think I want to start swimming again," she said suddenly. Marcus turned to her. "Really?" She nodded. "Not for them. For me." He didn't say anything, just reached out and squeezed her hand. At school, something else had shifted. A black student named Elijah, usually quiet, always near the back, raised his hand in history class to ask a question about civil protest. The teacher looked confused. "That's not today's topic." "It should be," Elijah said. Later that afternoon, flyers appeared in the hallways. "Silence is a choice." Wednesday, SITIN. No one claimed responsibility, but everyone knew where it started. Back at the precinct, a junior officer named Farley walked into the locker room and found the word "traitor" scratched into his locker. He'd testified truthfully during the inquiry. He'd said Mallory used language that didn't sound procedural, that it sounded personal. Farley didn't say a word. He pulled out a sticker from his pocket, a small image of Tiana's prosthetic with wildflowers drawn around it, and stuck it right over the scratch. No one said anything. But 2 lockers down, another sticker appeared by morning. The sit-in began at exactly 10:02 a.m., not with a chant, not with shouting, just the sound of chairs scraping softly across the floor in the central hallway. One by one, students lowered themselves onto the tile. No signs, no bullhorns. Only presence. Tiana didn't organize it, but she walked in the center, flanked by Elijah and Marisol. Her backpack rested beside her leg, one strap curled like a question mark. Teachers stood in doorways, unsure. Administrators began making calls. The principal, Mr. Hale, stepped out of his office, tie askew, holding a clipboard he didn't read from. "I'm asking you all to return to class," he said. No one moved. He looked directly at Tiana. "This doesn't help your case," he said. She blinked once. "It's not just mine." The silence deepened. Across town, Marcus stood behind his office window, watching as a police cruiser rolled slowly down the street and stopped outside. A young officer stepped out, nervous hands, pale face. He approached the building, hesitated at the door, and finally entered. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, not moving. The officer removed his hat. "I'm not here to argue. I needed to say something." Marcus watched him, expression unreadable. "I wasn't there that night, but I saw the footage. My sister, she has a prosthetic arm. Lost it in a crash. Watching that video," he paused. "I couldn't sleep." Marcus exhaled slowly. Then don't forget how it felt. The young officer nodded and left. At the district building, the superintendent paced outside a closed conference room where reporters had begun circling like moths. Behind the frosted glass, a leaked memo lay on the table, one that revealed the department's knowledge of prior complaints against Officer Mallory. None had been acted on. A sharp knock interrupted the pacing. It was Angela Bird, city councilwoman, black, composed, with edges honed by policy and grief. "I want to see the memo," she said. "It's confidential." "I didn't ask if it was legal. I asked to see it." She was handed a copy. The first line froze her. Mallory has shown a pattern of disproportionate stops involving black youth with disabilities. Angela didn't speak. She just folded the paper, tucked it into her bag, and walked out the front door, where a news camera just happened to be waiting. Back at school, the sit-in continued past lunch. Some students left and returned with snacks. Others laid their hoodies down as makeshift pillows. A few teachers brought water bottles. By 3:14 p.m., no disciplinary action had been taken. By 4:22 p.m., #SitWithTiana was trending nationwide. Tiana didn't speak. She just sat. Across the precinct, Mallory watched the footage on mute. A shaky cell phone video of students sitting shoulder to shoulder. His face nowhere in the frame, but his shadow in everything. He grabbed the remote and hurled it across the room. It cracked against the wall, pieces falling beside a bookshelf that hadn't been dusted in months. He walked out into the hallway, past junior officers who no longer looked him in the eye. At the vending machine, he fumbled for change, but the slot jammed. He slammed the machine once, hard. "Try respect," someone muttered behind him. He turned. Farley stood at the end of the hallway, arms folded, not smiling. Mallory didn't respond. The next morning, Marcus stood at a podium, not as a father, but as Chief Elridge. City press conference, cameras blinking like insects, microphones packed together like brambles. He cleared his throat. "There comes a time," he said, "when silence does more damage than the truth." Behind him stood Angela Bird, several officers of color, and one white sergeant who had quietly removed his badge and placed it on the podium before Marcus spoke. Marcus continued. "This department failed to protect one of its own citizen children, and worse, it violated her body, her dignity, and her right to be." He paused. Let it breathe. "There will be accountability, not to save face, but to start over." The room remained silent. Then came the first question, and Marcus didn't flinch. The officer who placed his badge on the podium never came back to retrieve it. It sat in Marcus's office, inside a small wooden box, beside a photo of Tiana from her 6th grade swim meet, goggles on her head, grinning sideways, missing a front tooth. That night, Marcus sat alone at his desk, the city lights behind him, his suit jacket folded over the back of his chair. He reached into the box, touched the badge once, then let the lid fall shut with a quiet thud. At school the next morning, the walls were covered in origami legs. Hundreds of paper sculptures folded from notebook pages and test prep packets. Legs with flowers drawn along the sides, some broken, some whole, all placed carefully like offerings. Tiana stopped at her locker, turned slowly in place, and looked around. No one said a word. But she knew. In the precinct, Mallory sat before an internal affairs panel. 3 senior officers, 1 civilian observer, 1 lawyer who didn't make eye contact. He shifted in his seat. "I did what I was trained to do," he said. "The girl was unresponsive. She didn't comply. I acted on instinct." The room stayed still. The civilian observer, a woman in a gray blouse with a single braid trailing over her shoulder, leaned forward. "Is that your final statement?" she asked. Mallory nodded. She opened a folder. Inside was a photograph. A prosthetic leg, twisted, discarded, its strap still clinging to a torn pant leg. She didn't lift the photo. She just stared at it. So that's your instinct. He said nothing. The lawyer placed a hand on Mallory's arm, but he shrugged it off. I thought she was faking, he mumbled. The woman didn't blink. We know. At Tiana's school, Mr. Hale received a phone call just before third period. He stepped out of his office, closed the door behind him, and walked directly to the guidance counselor's office. Take down the sit-in flyers, he said quietly. Why? The counselor asked. Because I just got off the phone with the board. We're no longer controlling this story, and I'd rather be a footnote than a villain. He walked back to his office, locked the door, and sat for a long time without touching his coffee. That afternoon, Elijah printed a new sign. We don't need permission to exist. They taped it above the trophy case. No one touched it. Across town, Angela Bird arrived at the mayor's office with a folder tucked under her arm. The mayor, pale, square-jawed, and visibly exhausted, stood when she entered. I assume this is about the investigation, he said. Angela didn't sit. She opened the folder and removed a single photo. Mallory shaking hands with the mayor at a police fundraiser 2 years earlier, with a caption that read, "A proud supporter of firm policing." Angela placed the photo on his desk. I'm not here for the investigation, she said. I'm here for your resignation if this isn't handled in 72 hours. He swallowed hard. You don't have that authority. She smiled faintly. I don't need it. I have the people. When she left, he didn't move for a full minute. Back at the Elridge home, Marcus helped Tiana reattach the new strap to her leg. The old one had been returned to them, bent and stretched, still bearing Mallory's fingerprints from the night he tore it off. Is it weird that I don't want to throw it away? She asked quietly. Marcus looked at her. No. He paused, then added, You don't bury the truth. You archive it. She nodded, then stood slowly, testing her balance. She walked across the room once, twice, then turned. I'm ready. He didn't ask for what. He knew. Outside, the sky turned a heavy gray, not storm, not sunlight. Just that breathless in-between where something big always comes next. The courtroom was colder than it looked. Tiana sat in the second row, her hands folded neatly in her lap. No fidgeting, no trembling, just stillness, like she'd trained for this moment by surviving every day since it happened. Marcus entered through a side door, suit pressed, no badge on display. Just a father, just a man who refused to shrink. Mallory sat at the defense table, jaw tight, suit ill-fitting. His lawyer whispered something, but Mallory's eyes never left Tiana. Not with apology, not with remorse. Just fear of what silence might cost him now. The judge entered. All rose. And the city held its breath. Outside the courthouse, the plaza had filled with quiet protesters. No chants, no drums. Just rows of folding chairs, each one labeled with the name of a disabled person stopped by law enforcement in the last 5 years. Some names had red tape across them. A few chairs were empty, not by accident. At noon, an elder veteran rose from one of the chairs, removed his prosthetic hand, and held it up. I served for this country, he said calmly into the cameras. I didn't serve for this. Inside, the first witness was called. Marisol. She spoke with a steady voice, recalling the day of the stop, the way Tiana was forced to lean against the car, how she cried without sound, how the leg came off with a single motion, like pulling weeds. The courtroom stayed silent, except for the faint scratch of a stenographer's keys. Next came Elijah. He didn't testify like a student, he testified like a citizen. She never raised her voice, he said. He did, and that should tell you everything. Mallory shifted in his seat. His lawyer placed a hand on his back. Then came the moment no one expected. Marcus took the stand. He didn't bring notes. He didn't speak as a chief. He spoke as a father. My daughter's leg was made in pieces, he said. Titanium, silicone, a molded joint. But it carried her across a stage when she won her first spelling bee. It walked her up 3 flights of stairs when the elevator was broken, and it was hers. He let the words settle. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't resistance. It was part of her body. And this officer, he turned slightly toward Mallory, ripped it away like it didn't belong. Mallory didn't look at him. He looked at the floor. A flicker of something crossed his face, shame or calculation, no one could tell. The judge called for a recess. As everyone stood, a quiet gasp traveled through the room. One of the jurors had begun to cry. Not loudly, just a hand over her mouth, shoulders trembling. Outside, the clouds had broken, not into sun, but into rain, soft and cold, like the sky remembering something it forgot to say. People stayed. Umbrellas opened. Jackets came off. No one moved from the chairs. Back inside, Mallory stepped into the hallway alone. His lawyer followed several steps behind. A young officer passed by, nodded to Marcus, then looked at Mallory like something beneath a shoe. Mallory opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. Across the street, Angela Bird entered a newsroom, sat in the anchor chair, and held up the prosthetic leg strap returned to Tiana. "This is not evidence," she said into the camera. "This is the cost of pretending we don't know better." The image went viral in under an hour. By evening, the city was divided into 2 sounds: the clicking of news updates and the silence of people finally listening. The verdict came quietly. No outburst. No applause. Just the sound of a man's breath catching in his throat, and the scrape of a chair as the jury stood. Guilty. Mallory didn't blink. He didn't look at anyone. Not even himself. He stood as if something invisible was holding him upright. Not pride. Not dignity. Just the weight of consequence finally arriving. Tiana reached for her father's hand. She didn't squeeze it. She just held it. Outside the courthouse, the chairs were still there. Rain drying on the seats. A few names smeared from ink to shadow. Elijah stood by the edge, holding a sign against his chest. It said, "We're not broken. We were never broken." Reporters surrounded Marcus as he stepped out. They asked about justice, about leadership, about what comes next. He didn't give them quotes. He gave them silence. Then one sentence. Just because something was done doesn't mean it was ever right. That night, the department issued a statement. It used words like policy review and training improvements. No apology, just distance. But the people? They spoke louder. A new mural was painted across the school gym wall. Tiana in mid-stride. One leg metal. One leg muscle. Both powerful. Underneath it, in bold letters, "She never fell. You just never saw her stand." The badge that once lived in Marcus's office was mailed back to the state. No ceremony. No note. Just a folded copy of the Code of Conduct, with one line underlined: "Do no harm." Angela Bird received the city's highest civilian honor. She didn't attend the ceremony. She sent a photo instead. Tiana holding a microphone at the youth town hall. Marcus standing behind her. Smiling. Soft. Proud. Tired. Not because they lost, but because winning here costs everything. At sunrise, Tiana walked the long hallway of her school. Alone. Her steps echoed. Her leg hissed slightly with each motion. a rhythm, a reminder. She reached the main doors, paused, looked back. The trophies, the mural, the origami legs still taped to the walls. She whispered, "You don't get to break me. You just get to watch me rebuild." Then she stepped into the light. This was a story about silence and the cost of ripping power from the voiceless. It was about a child's body and a city's soul. And it asked one question: what part of justice are you willing to carry? If this story moved you, like, share, subscribe. Tell us in the comments. What do you think happened to Officer Mallory after the cameras stopped rolling? And if you've ever watched someone reclaim what was stolen from them, tell us what it looked like. We're listening. This is Justice Throne, and we tell stories that don't whisper, they echo.